Today, I'd like to talk to you all about effective communication in criminal law. By the end of this speech, I would like for you all to feel encouraged to practice more effective communication practices within the criminal law field. Effective communication in criminal law is important and needed for a smooth operation within the justice system. Do me a favor and close your eyes. Imagine being a defendant represented by an attorney that is incapable of communicating effectively. They aren't organized in how they present the necessary evidence. They forget important information to mention, and they don't always say things in the appropriate manner for the courtroom. Open your eyes. How do you foresee your trial going in that scenario? Effective communication in criminal law is important and needed for a smooth operation within the justice system. There's an article entitled Communication Tools for Cases Involving Self-Represented Litigants that states, the court system rests heavily on the communication skills of and the communication between the various participants. What does that mean? When we don't have communication, effective communication, justice cannot be served. So why should you care about this? And how does it relate to me? I want to tell you all a little bit about an instance that I had to represent myself within the courtroom. I didn't know how to prepare. I didn't know how to properly cross-examine the witnesses. I tried my best, but was I actually fully effective in the way that I communicated my message to the judge? Probably not the best. I probably could have done a lot better if I had the education and skill level of an actual lawyer. But I'm just a master's student as of yet. In that same article that I just mentioned, they also state, clearly, cases involving self-represented parties present special communication challenges. Under the time pressure and stress of heavy and often highly charged calendars, how can you best perform your fact-finding and decision-making functions with parties not legally trained? How can you be sure that parties who do not have attorneys as intermediaries understand and comply with your orders and rulings? How can you make sure that justice is not more difficult to attain for self-represented litigants? Another example about wrongful convictions. I had the opportunity to meet a few different individuals who were wrongfully convicted of a crime, and majority of the ruling came from them having ineffective assistance of counsel. So in this speech, I'd like to talk about ineffective communication in criminal law, some solutions that we can come up with, the benefits to those solutions, and closing out on how we can ourselves be effective in our communication within the legal realm. So ineffective communication in criminal law. Number one problem, wrongful convictions. In an article entitled How Bad Lawyering Can Result in Wrongful Convictions, it states, some people accused of a crime receive representation by overburdened, poorly paid, inexperienced, and sometimes barely competent court-appointed defense attorneys. As a result, some people run the risk of being wrongfully convicted of a crime. So yes, you can be wrongfully convicted if you have counsel that does not accurately represent you in the most positive light in the courtroom. The next problem, misleading the jury. This goes hand in hand with wrongful convictions. If counsel is not representing you to their best ability, they're not asking the appropriate questions to get the full truth out, the jury might lean more towards what the prosecution is saying, causing you to thus then be wrongfully convicted. Third problem is deteriorating hope for the defendants. In an additional article entitled, Did Inadequate Legal Representation Play a Role in Your Conviction? It states, your attorney should give you advice about everything, from whether you should testify in court to how you dress during the trial. A good lawyer helps make you sympathetic to the jury, creates reasonable doubt about whether you committed a crime, and helps counter or undermine the evidence against you as a defendant. If your counsel does not understand what's going on in the courtroom, there will be problematic errors to occur. In addition to this quote from this article, and on the subject of deteriorating hope for defendants, I also want to mention indigent defendants and defendants of color. Why? Because I feel like these particular groups have the most problems with effective communication. Indigent defendants don't necessarily have the education to know how to best represent themselves or how to ask to be best represented. They don't have the funds to appoint their own counsel, so they are more than likely receiving court-appointed counsel, which goes back to the mention of the article, How Bad Lawyering Can Result in Wrongful Convictions, of seeing poorly paid, inexperienced, and somewhat to not really competent court-appointed defense attorneys being given to these individuals during trial. Lastly, I'd like to touch on questioning as a problem. Again, if your counsel is not asking the right questions or not formulating the questions appropriately, as we've learned in professional communications, the way you say things means a lot. If they're not doing that, you're going to run into problems. So what's our solution? What changes do we need? We need better training and education for our attorneys. I personally believe that hands-on experience is the number one way in which we can counter seeing ineffective communication in the courtroom. If we're putting our lawyers in scenarios where they have to answer questions and go through different scenarios and practice that hands-on, we will see better outcomes. We need to reduce bias and improve cultural competency. Our lawyers should not care what their clients look like. You should be able to represent any and everybody in the same exact manner. What are the benefits? Effective communication will help in providing actual justice. It will save the lives of those who have been wrongfully convicted or given an unjust system. Start dismantling some of the issues in the justice system as well. So to conclude, ineffective communication can be the line between life or death in the field of criminal law. The way in which one goes about representing clients can make or break their experience in the courtroom. Effective communication can help eliminate some of the issues we see within the justice system. We want to make sure that we're touching on effective communication within the criminal law system. We want to touch on finding those solutions of how to better educate our attorneys, and we want to make sure that we hit those benefits of effective communication. As we look towards the end of our MLS journey, start thinking of how you can be effective in your communication in the field of law in which you want to work. How can you best represent your client? What guidance may you still need in order to improve in this area?